Listen to the All in My Head podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Please, allow me to show you something.
Welcome back to the All in My Head podcast. I'm Jenny, and I'm your host for all things happening in my head. This is episode 3, and I'm really excited to be back, and I'm excited that everyone is listening, so I want to shout you all out for taking time to listen to my podcasts. Episodes 1 and 2 are up and available now, but here in episode 3, which is called Jesus and Buddha and Crystals, oh my. I'm going to discuss and talk a little bit about spirituality and how it has changed for me from the time I was a child up until adulthood and everything in between. I've written a lot about all the subjects that I have spoken about thus far and will speak about, including this, in my blog, which you can find online at everythingivewantedtobe.wordpress.com. And that is a space for me that I started probably close to 10 years ago now. And I've written some pieces about spirituality. I've written poetry there, topics that are kind of out in the political world and how it's affected me personally. And also just about my family, about life, about things that I feel super grateful for and also super passionate about. So I hope you will go over to that blog and check out some of my writing. It'll kind of give you an insight more into myself and my writing, but also the things that are important to me and how I kind of process through those things. Specifically for this episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about growing up Catholic and how that was somewhat of a difficult journey for me. In previous episodes, I've touched on the fact that I was raised in a Catholic family, a Latino Catholic family, and also went to Catholic schools most of my life. And it was somewhat rigid for me. This is not the case for everyone. And it is definitely not to down talk Catholicism or any religion for that matter. This is my experience and how I kind of came to be in the spiritual space that I am now as a 51-year-old woman who's raised 3 kids, has grandchildren now, and also the journey with my husband and how we've navigated through. So for me, it was interesting. I would say I was definitely a very faithful person growing up, but I also felt like it was a very rigid and strict and confining upbringing, and Catholicism was really at the root and at the base of that. And I saw it as a very black and white way of living. There wasn't really room for that gray areas. And also, I had a lot of questions growing up. I still have a lot of questions. And because I couldn't necessarily believe in that black and white way of thinking, that God judged and would turn his back on anyone if you sinned in any way, shape, or form, or that he would turn his back on anyone who stepped outside of those lines. For instance, who somebody loves. I just couldn't believe that that was the way that God looked at his children. So I had a lot of questions growing up, and my husband had a lot of questions as well. So we definitely vibed in that area and discussed a lot about our upbringing and what was our beliefs as we got older. And as my title suggests, All in My Head, I had a lot of those conversations with God in my head. I talked to him and to my angels who left this earth. And I never felt necessarily that my prayers were in vain, but I also felt like I had so many questions and I couldn't necessarily speak to someone or to people here on earth. So I was hoping that those were being received in heaven. And in those angels who left this earth and left me a better person because of it, but also for guidance. I think anyone who touches your life is there to guide you. And so again, like I said, I don't think those prayers were necessarily in vain, but I also couldn't look at faith and Christianity or Catholicism as a linear thing. I felt like there was always more to spirituality, but I couldn't explore that because I felt like I was in this box of you're either a Catholic and you're Christian and you follow the Bible to a T and you don't question things, but also you didn't really get explanations as to why, other than it is in the Bible and this is the way it is and this is what God believes. I felt like I couldn't really stand by everything there was. And of course, growing up and seeing things happening throughout the world and also within that box of church made it a little bit more difficult for me. And so I found myself questioning things and writing things down and having discussions with people of other faiths, but also within my own family. We did, after I got married and was out of my home and had my own children, we did start in the Catholic faith with our children. And I think it definitely gave them a base of faith, but also there were so many questions still. So I could see some of the rigidity. My oldest son could probably tell you the most because he was the oldest and the first one to be exposed to that. And he actually went for a short period of time to the same Catholic middle school that I went to. And some of the same nuns were there, some of the same teachers, and they were still teaching the same way they did some 10 years, 20 years prior. So it started to raise more questions amongst our immediate family, my husband, my children, and between us. So we had kind of gotten away from church for some years. We felt disconnected in a way, and probably because of our upbringings, we didn't know how to get those questions answered without judgment, or so we thought at that time. And then I would say our faith was very tested when our youngest son was diagnosed with cancer. And he was 2 years old, a little bit older than 2 years old, about a month after his 2-year birthday. And our faith was very tested at that point. I think not only faith in God, but also faith in humanity. I think there were so many things happening in our lives at that time that we just were at a standstill for a very long time. And going through having a child with a terminal illness and this type of diagnosis where every day and every minute of every day is surrounding the care and entrusting your child to a medical team to help them get better was just something that brought me to my knees. And I think my husband will talk about this further in our next episode, which will be he will be a guest on, and we're going to talk about all things marriage and family and love and being together for close to 33 years now. And he can probably talk on his perspective of how that changed us as a couple, as a family, and also our faith. I literally felt like the world was upside down. And I had days where I felt absolutely hopeless. I had days where I was so mad. I was mad at God. I was mad at the world. I was mad at everyone. I was mad at myself. And there were days that I refused to pray because I felt jaded. I felt forgotten. I felt that what type of God would do this to a child? And this is me being completely honest. I think anyone who goes through a situation like this has moments where you question everything. And there were also days where I was literally brought down to my knees sobbing with every part of my being and praying nonstop for this child, praying for our family, praying for other children who we saw along this way, and praying for the world. And I think that that was a big turning point for me in my life and in our life as a family. Shortly after our youngest son, Bennett's diagnosis, we did find a church that we felt connected to. And it was a Christian church, not necessarily Catholic, but Christian. And we felt a connection there. We felt like we belonged there and that some of our questions were finally being answered, but also we didn't feel judged in any way, and we felt included. And specifically for our children, I think I felt growing up as a Catholic that the youth weren't really represented and nurtured within the church, but I definitely felt different with that for our sons. I felt like they were very much a part of their youth groups, that they were seen, they were heard, they were welcomed, and that they really had a bigger part in the church and a big part in helping us heal some of those areas that we felt broken in. And that was a big turning point for us. When we moved out of that city, we were able to find a similar church in the city in Connecticut that was so close to that church and that welcomed our children. And I think as our kids got older, they felt very connected with the church and with the friends that they made through church and the youth groups and the pastors and the youth pastors and the activities that they got to be involved in that really helped them flourish in their faith. And it's not to say that they went on and continued on in those faiths. Each of my children has their own journey that they're on and that they've been on. And I've said to them, I don't care what you believe in as long as you believe that someone or something is out there for your higher good and is rooting for you. And I think that that's how spirituality changed for me as I began getting older and that I felt more comfortable in my own skin. During the pandemic, and specifically, I was online and searching for groups, and I came upon a group on Facebook that helped me to investigate and step into more sacred spaces, and in particular, sacred spaces with other women. I think we as a culture tend to not support women uplifting women. I can speak for myself, but I have also learned through this group how many of us have these sister or mother wounds that we are nurturing and trying to figure out how to navigate through. And this in particular group, her Sacred Circle, had an online group started by a woman locally in the Myrtle Beach area, and I just started dropping in on their online sessions, and there were so many things that were talked about in this group, and there were women who showed their spirituality and showed their gifts through tarot cards, through oracle readings, through psychic readings, through crystals, through manifestations, through so many things that I had thought about and wanted to explore more, but I had that fear of being judged. And in fact, it was just ignorance on my part because anything outside of that church box was very much frowned upon. It was black magic, or it was brujeria, and the Latinos would say. And I think finding this sister collective online helped me to navigate through finding what spirituality could look like if we let go of our preconceived notions, but also what has been and had been thrust upon us as children. So for me, it was a beautiful way to navigate through and find like-minded people and to cut through some of these wounds and to look at spirituality in a different mind frame, in a different space. I think, yoga and meditation, guided meditations, journaling, oracle cards, and so many other things could be seen as spiritual guidance. And so for me, I think I started to take more time to look at spirituality and to read other religious scriptures, to look at not only Catholicism in a different way, and to look at Christianity in a different way, but also to look at what religion or spirituality could mean to me. I don't think I want to confine it into a box of religion anymore. I think reading other religious scriptures and reading, things in the Buddhist religion and Hindu and Islam opened me up in a different way. And I read such a great quote that said, there is a misconception that Buddhism is a religion and that you worship Buddha. Buddhism is a practice like yoga. You can be a Christian and practice Buddhism. And it went on to say, I met a Catholic priest who lives in a Buddhist monastery in France, and he told me that Buddhism makes him a better Christian, and I love that. That was from Thich Nhat Hanh, and I love that. I love that even a Catholic priest could say and take a moment to say, living in this monastery, being surrounded by people who looked at spirituality in a different way and who looked at it in a non-judgmental way, helped him grow to be a better Christian. And I think that for me is what spirituality has become. Spirituality is vast. It's personal. It is not like what I think I always thought it needed to look like growing up. Some days for me, it is going to church, and mostly I do that online with my church. And that's a new thing because we could never do that before, to go to church online. But some days it's meditation, and some days it is sitting and practicing yoga. And some days it is working with crystals and pulling oracle cards and journaling and reading prayer cards. Or some days it's just sitting and being and listening to what my body needs. Sometimes spirituality and prayer for me are just sitting and stopping and honoring quiet and honoring space and honoring what my mind and my body need. And I think that that's what spirituality is for me now. It is not necessarily a church. It's not necessarily going into a church and showing up and believing in one set religion. Not that that is a bad thing. I think it's just not what is for me anymore. Spirituality to me now is more about what makes and gives me peace. I think what getting older and being more comfortable in my skin has allowed me to do is to explore and to feel okay to ask questions and feel good about exploring things outside of the realm of one religion and one box. I would also say that if someone asked me if I am or if I believe in a specific religion, I would probably lean towards Christianity, but also I feel like spirituality is more than religion for me. I feel like it has grown, and it has grown me. I have grown in my understanding of other religions. I have grown in believing there is more than just a box of religion, that being a good person is more than just what religion you are assigned to or have assigned yourself to. I do have other beliefs, and I feel like I can make them and let them, I should say, allow them to coexist. And that's what makes me feel at peace and happy. And that helps me through my everyday life. I talked a little bit about that in my last episode, First we have coffee, then we do stuff, where I start my day with intentionality and in a meditative state, whatever that is, whether it's just sitting with my cup of coffee and centering myself and intentionally putting forward what I would like my day to be. And so I think that that's a big part of spirituality for me. I think being intentional, being a good person. I feel like being someone who is active in my community, who is helping others in whatever way I can, and who wants to leave the world a better place before I'm gone, and maybe leave that behind as what people would remember me by, is more of what my spirituality is about and what it holds for me. I mean, people would say now that I'm probably like woo-woo, and I have my crystals, and I have my oracle cards, and I have lots of literature on different aspects of spirituality, and I read a lot and take that all in. And I think any knowledge that we can gain is only going to make us stronger and make us better humans. So for me, that's what spirituality has become. It's not a religion per se. It's all of the things that help you feel grounded, feel safe, feel at peace, but that also help you be a better human and leave this world a better place. So, as I do at the end of our podcast, I want to leave you with a couple questions. What brings you peace and comfort? What helps you center and feel safe? Is it a spiritual practice? Is it a religion? What does that look like for you? And again, feel free to leave comments when you listen to my podcasts and I leave you with those questions. I love hearing from you. I have heard from quite a few of you already, and I'm so thankful for the excitement behind this podcast. It has been so great for me already. It is another healing modality for me, and I thank you for taking time out of your day to listen, and I look forward to being with you all again soon for episode 4. Thanks so much. Have a great day.